The handcuffs clicking around Margaret's wrists made the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. You're under arrest for filing false police reports, harassment, and attempted breaking and entering, Officer Rodriguez announced while Margaret's face cycled through 17 different shades of red. Behind her, 3 squad cars sat in my driveway like Christmas morning wrapped in flashing lights. "This is ridiculous," Margaret shrieked, her perfectly coiffed hair finally showing cracks in the armor. "I'm the HOA president. I have every right to inspect this property." Officer Rodriguez glanced at me with barely concealed amusement. "Ma'am, calling 911 claiming there's a domestic violence situation just to gain entry to someone's home is a felony." Margaret's eyes went wide. "How did you know it was you?" I smiled, pulling out my phone. "Because my wife took your call, Margaret. All of them." Let me back up 6 months to when this delightful saga began. My wife Sarah and I had just moved into Willowbrook Estates, one of those cookie-cutter suburban developments where the grass is always green and the neighbors are always watching. We thought we'd hit the jackpot. Nice house, good schools, quiet street. Then we met Margaret. Margaret Pemberton Hayes. Yes, she hyphenated her maiden name because of course she did, was the kind of woman who treated her HOA presidency like she was running a small dictatorship. Picture a woman in her 50s with the kind of blonde highlights that scream, "I need to speak to your manager," paired with the dead-eyed stare of someone who gets genuine joy from making others miserable. She introduced herself 3 days after we moved in by standing in my driveway at 7 a.m., clipboard in hand, wearing a blazer that probably costs more than my car payment. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said with the warmth of a dental drill. "I'm Margaret, your HOA president. I need to conduct a property inspection." I was still in my pajamas, coffee cup in hand, wondering if I was being punked. "Inspection for what?" "Compliance," she said. Like that explained everything. "I've already noted several violations." I looked around my pristine yard, then back at her, such as, "Your mailbox is the wrong shade of black." I wish I was making this up. That was just the appetizer. Over the next few weeks, Margaret made it her personal mission to find fault with everything we did. Our garden gnome was aesthetically inappropriate. Our welcome mat was commercially unsuitable. Our car was parked 3 inches beyond the acceptable driveway boundary. Each violation came with a formal letter, typed on official HOA letterhead, threatening fines that increased with each offense. The woman had turned petty tyranny into an art form. The breaking point came when she declared our Halloween decorations excessively festive and demanded we remove them in September, before we'd even put them up. "This is insane," I told Sarah that night. "She's making up rules as she goes." Sarah, who works as a 911 dispatcher, had been unusually quiet during my rant. "She's escalating," she said finally. "I've seen this pattern before. People like Margaret don't stop until they face real consequences." "What do you mean?" "She's testing boundaries. When harassment doesn't work, they usually try intimidation. When that fails. Double quote Sarah shrug. They get desperate." Sarah was right. Margaret's next move was to start showing up at our house uninvited, claiming she needed to verify compliance with whatever imaginary rule she'd invented that week. When I refused to let her in, she'd stand in our yard taking photos and making notes like some suburban CIA operative. The day she brought backup to other HOA board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, I knew things were about to get interesting. "Mr. Johnson," Margaret announced, "we're conducting an emergency property inspection. You're required to grant us access." "No," I said simply. "You're required to make an appointment and have a valid reason." Her face twitched. "I don't need your permission. HOA bylaws clearly state." "Actually, they don't. I've done my homework. Would you like me to read you the relevant section?" Margaret's backup crew suddenly found the ground very interesting. She, however, doubled down. "You're in violation of 17 separate covenants," she declared, producing A folder thick enough to kill a small animal. If you don't allow this inspection, I'll have no choice but to involve the authorities. Go ahead, I said, closing the door. Big mistake. Margaret. Huge. The first 911 call came 2 days later. There's a domestic dispute at 1247 Maple Street. Margaret's voice crackled through Sarah's headset. I can hear yelling and breaking glass. Send units immediately? Sarah, who was working the night shift, recognized the address instantly. She also recognized the voice. Margaret had called the dispatch center multiple times to complain about noise ordinances and parking violations. Ma'am, can you provide more details about what you're witnessing? There's definitely violence. I can see shadows moving around. Someone could be hurt. Sarah glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. I was asleep in bed next to her, and our house was darker than a black hole. Mum, are you calling from 1247 Maple Street? No, I'm across the street. I can see everything from here. Sarah made a note in the system and dispatched units for a welfare check. When they arrived, they found Margaret standing in our yard with a flashlight, peering through our windows. The officers were not amused. Margaret's second call came a week later. This time, she claimed she witnessed a suspicious person breaking into our house at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday while I was mowing the lawn in full view of the street. Sarah took that call too. What did this suspicious person look like? Mum. Tall, dark hair, wearing a red shirt. He just walked right in like he owned the place. Sarah glanced at the security camera feed from our doorbell, a recent purchase inspired by Margaret's behavior. There I was, in my red shirt, letting myself into my own house with my own key. Mum, have you considered that this might be the homeowner? I would know if. Margaret's voice cut off abruptly. Sarah made another note. The pattern was becoming clear. The third call was the charm. This is an emergency. Margaret's voice was breathless with fake urgency. There's a domestic violence situation at 1247 Maple Street. I can hear a woman screaming for help. You need to send officers immediately to force entry. This time, Sarah didn't just make notes. She hit record. Ma'am, this is the third call about this address. Can you explain why you're monitoring this residence so closely? I'm the HOA President. It's my job to call 911 with false reports. The line went quiet. Sarah dispatched officers not for a welfare check, but to arrest Margaret for filing false police reports, which brings us back to the beautiful sound of handcuffs clicking. As Margaret was loaded into the squad car, she made one last desperate attempt to maintain her authority. You can't do this. I have rights. I'm the HOA President. Officer Rodriguez paused at the car door. Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. The entire neighborhood had come out to watch the show. Margaret's backup crew from the HOA board were notably absent, but plenty of other neighbors stood in their yards, some actually applauding. As the squad car pulled away, Sarah emerged from the house in her work uniform, home from her shift just in time to see Margaret's farewell tour. How was work, honey? I asked innocently. Quiet night, she said with a grin. Just one interesting call. The epilogue practically wrote itself. Margaret resigned from the HOA in disgrace, and her replacement actually read the bylaws before trying to enforce them. The harassment stopped. The fake violations disappeared. Our garden Nomi remains unmolested to this day. But the best part, Margaret moved out of Willowbrook Estates 3 months later. Apparently, living in a neighborhood where everyone knows you got arrested for harassing your neighbors, and great for property values. As for Sarah and me, we're still here, still happily violating Margaret's imaginary rules, and our Halloween decorations get more excessively festive every year. Some people never learn, but some people marry 911 dispatchers. Game over. Margaret.